All right, I want you to drop right into the morning of November 3rd, 2010 with me. We are framing this entire explainer around a single, incredibly high stakes decision that literally fundamentally altered the American economy. It's a moment that honestly, most people completely missed, yet it impacts every single dollar in your bank account today. So, on that crisp fall morning, 64-year-old Thomas Honig woke up in his room at the Fairmont Hotel in Washington, D.C. He knew exactly what he had to do that day, and he also knew he was almost certainly going to fail. As the president of the Federal Reserve Bank of Kansas City, he was about to walk into a room and cast a vote against the intensely powerful Federal Reserve leadership and the absolute titans of Wall Street. He was going to vote no. Section 1, the Lonely Dissenter. Now, you might be wondering, why exactly would a high-ranking official cast a completely isolated, dissenting vote when literally everyone else was falling in line? Well, we have to look at the Federal Open Market Committee, or FOMC. They meet every 6 weeks to basically determine the value and quantity of all American money. And while the rest of the committee was pushing for this unprecedented intervention to just pump money into the financial system, Honing's deep-seated prudence told him this new policy wasn't just risky, it was a looming catastrophe. He felt it was his absolute duty to stop it. Okay, let's dive into this. Section 2, Lessons from the Plumbing Business. To really grasp Honing's profound resistance, we actually have to rewind far away from those opulent DC boardrooms all the way back to his childhood in 1946. Picture this. It's a freezing Christmas vacation in Fort Madison, Iowa. Most kids are out playing in the snow, right? But not 9-year-old Thomas. He's standing in the drafty back room of his father Leo's small plumbing business, gripping a clipboard. You see, Leo was raised on a strict farm outside of town where kids woke up in the pitch black before dawn to do grueling chores. There were no real vacations, no days off. Hard physical work and maintaining the systems that kept people warm and safe, that was just a constant structural part of their life. As his older sister Kathleen Kelly remembers it, you were part of that family, and this is what families did. That was your responsibility. This wasn't just about sweeping floors on a weekend. It was an incredibly strict culture of obligation. It completely defined his father's upbringing, and in turn, it fundamentally shaped Honing's entire worldview. He learned super early on that complex systems require constant maintenance, meticulous hard work, and above all else, unwavering responsibility. Because of those freezing days with that clipboard in the plumbing shop, Honig viewed the invisible, highly complex U.S. money supply the exact same way a stressed-out building superintendent views the building's plumbing and heating. You manage it with extreme care, prudence, and integrity. If you treat it like a Wall Street gambler looking for a quick, high-risk payout, the pipes burst, the building catches on fire, you just don't play games with the plumbing. Which brings us to Section 3, the Law of Lags. This is absolutely crucial to understand the actual mechanics of Fed policy. It's anchored right in that lesson Honig brought from his Iowa childhood. It's called the Law of Long and Variable Lags. This was the first pillar of Honing's approach to the economy. Basically, it's the principle that when a central bank pulls a lever, you don't see the real result immediately. The actions play out over months or even years, and almost always carry totally unexpected economic side effects. You know, Honig recognized that Fed leaders are human, just like us. When markets panic, there is an immense psychological pressure to just do something to generate calming headlines for tomorrow. But Honig knew from the law of lags that immediate reactionary fixes in the financial plumbing almost always create slow-moving, completely unpredictable disasters down the line in the real world. Let's move to and see how this builds in Section 4, the Age of ZIRP. This is the era where Thomas Honig's absolute worst fears about short-term fixes actually became a reality. ZIRP stands for Zero Interest Rate Policy. Let's break down this jargon so we can really see the extreme easy money policies the Fed used to fight the 2008 crash. For nearly a decade, between 2008 and roughly 2017, the Fed essentially pinned interest rates at zero. They made borrowing money virtually free, while simultaneously pumping vast amounts of new cash right into the financial system. And they hit what economists call the zero bound. Historically, an interest rate of zero was thought to be the theoretical limit of the Fed's power. I mean, you can't really go lower than zero, right? But the Fed wanted to push even further. So they bypassed normal limits using a tool called quantitative easing. They were literally flooding the financial plumbing with unprecedented amounts of money to force the economy moving. The easiest way to track this massive flood is the Fed's balance sheet. It's simply a ledger of what the central bank owns and owes.
But listen to this terrifying math. Before the crash of 2008, the Fed's balance sheet was about $900 billion. During the age of ZIRP, as they created money out of thin air to buy assets, that balance sheet swelled to $4.5 trillion. That is a staggering amount of money.
So where do all that easy money go? Well, it fueled a high-risk, debt-fueled speculation boom that was the complete opposite of Honing's grounded Iowa work ethic. Private equity firms used leveraged, incredibly cheap loans to buy up industrial companies like Rexnord, placing them on a literal treadmill of debt just to extract cash. Hedge funds borrowed billions to exploit microscopic price differences in treasury bills, a highly leveraged strategy called the basis trade. The system wasn't building real value at all, it was just taking on massive, fragile leverage.
Section 5. The Viral Crash.
This brings our narrative to the climax of 2020. This was the exact moment the highly fragile, debt-loaded plumbing system built during the age of ZIRP faced its ultimate catastrophic stress test. The eerie, rapid onset of the COVID-19 pandemic unfolded in just a matter of weeks. In January, mysterious news trickled out of Wuhan. By early January, investors like Jim Bianco were sounding the alarm about massive supply chain shutdowns, though, of course, most of Wall Street ignored it. And then on March 4th, 2020, Thomas Honig visited a Starbucks. It was perfectly normal. Nobody wore masks, people shook hands. There were only 158 reported cases in the US. Nobody knew it yet, but that normal coffee run was the closing chapter on an epic of American economic history. Normal life was about to end. When the pandemic crashed the global economy just a few weeks later, that heavily indebted financial system immediately seized up. To stop a total collapse, the Fed stepped in with the largest expenditure of American public resources since World War II. They instantly bloated their balance sheet to a jaw-dropping $8 trillion. As outlined in our source material, The Lords of Easy Money, this massive intervention did exactly what Honig had warned about a decade earlier. The 2020 bailout overwhelmingly rewarded the largest corporations and the absolute riskiest Wall Street speculators, the very entities that had gorged on the cheap debt of the ZIRP era. It solidified a system where the biggest players were totally insulated from failure, while ordinary Americans were left facing unprecedented economic distress. Honing's lonely, stubborn descent back in 2010 had been proven entirely right, which leaves us with one final vital question today. If you think back to Honing's father's plumbing shop in Iowa, you can't just keep patching a highly pressurized system with quick fixes forever. We have to ask ourselves, is the Federal Reserve's ultimate cure of easy money and $8 trillion bailouts actually fixing the foundation, or is it just setting the stage for an even larger, totally unpredictable flood down the line? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep questioning the system, and I'll see you next time.